Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Welcome to Encora Dev Week 2023. I am Kathy Tarango from the Operational Communication team here at Encora Mexico. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to this session, which is called The Future of LLM and How We Can Prepare. We will explore the rapidly evolving field of large language models, the importance of adaptation to stay on top of the game and to stay ahead of the client's demands. Give a warm welcome to Kevin Yeom, who will be sharing this topic with us today. He is the Vice President of Engineering here at Encora Enterprise, working directly in the engineering and delivery of all the projects and the digital experience business unit at Encora. During Kevin's talk, I need to remind you, you are free to use the chat, leave any comments or questions about the subject so Kevin can take a look at it. Now, that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce this topic and to learn a little bit more about it. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. Like she said, today the topic is about future of LLM and how we can prepare. Um, and I think we can get started right away. So a little bit about myself as VP of Engineering. I've done a lot of projects in the past 10 years with working at Encora, such as key clients like LG, KPMG, and Berkshire Hathaway brands. There were a lot of AI projects involved in the past couple of years regarding, recommendation engines for e-commerce, as well as KPMG Global Cognitive, which is basically a video transcription platform where we use Azure AI. So in the past couple projects, AI has been booming in the recent years, in the recent months. So today, I'd like to just talk about how we can leverage LLMs, as well as just an introduction about LLM, and then how we can prepare for the future. So the agenda is on the left side. So like I said, introductions, and we'll also talk about OpenAI role, how they came to the market and basically helped us democratize the AI for everybody, as well as what are the recent concerns that rises with the LLMs, and then what are the solutions to these concerns, like which we'll talk in detail in the later slides. So next slide. So introductions to LLM. What is a LLM? Large language model, right? So it's a part of a AI field that has been grown in the past recent 3 to 4 years. But if we take a step back, AI is a field of itself, and then there's a machine learning inside. And under machine learning, there's a lot of different specific fields, and one of them being deep learning. And what deep learning is trying to mimic a human neural network, so that there's individual nodes where they will talk to each other to train and communicate. And that has now grown into a field called generative AI, where you can train a large data sets of data in order to create basically a database of a, a artificial intelligence, which it can read the data to predict or uh, give you a summary or the next word or guess the next alphabet of what you need to print in the next based on your prompt. So there's a huge boom in LLMs. Like I said, OpenAI, GPT, ChatGPT models has been everywhere in the recent news markets and so on. And there are other ones like Llama, which is semi-leaked by Meta for open source purposes, for academic purpose at this point. But eventually, I believe that might be converting to commercial. And there's also Google. We can never forget Google. They also have BART, which is Palm 1 and Palm 2 based models. And there's other open source models based in Hugging Face, where people go to Hugging Face to upload and share models. At the top here, as you can see, there is some history of the LLM. It started as small models for proof of concepts by a couple of people, GPT-1, GPT-2, and so on, back in 2019 and 2020. Those had less than 1 billion parameters of training data. Eventually, GPT-2 became 1.5, and Llama when it was released, it was at 65 billion parameters. And then when GPT-3 was released, it's at 175 billion. And now Palm and Palm 2 is known to be above 500 billion parameters. So it's exponentially growing, where it has a lot of data. It can answer a lot of different questions around different languages, not just English language like that, linguistic languages. It can also answer in technical languages like C, Python, Java, and so on. So it's being very helpful. People can ask questions about anything and can answer, but it does have issues. It's not perfect, but we're in the current phase of a huge spike in this development of large language models. All right, so let's talk about OpenAI's role in advancing the LLMs. So prior to the, I guess, recent days, machine learning AI were only accessible to experts, researchers, scientists, where they will try to solve a specific use cases. An example might be AlphaGo, which is a Google's DeepMind-based machine AI that has beaten the best players in Go, the game Go. And this was back in 2017, 18, I believe, and it has dramatically improved. But there was one use case where AI can beat humans, right? And there's other problems that people try to solve, especially like example like IBM Watson. They claim to solve a lot of things, but it wasn't that successful as OpenAI. But it was the first marketing uh, blue boom that happened. Everybody heard of IBM Watson, but doesn't really know what they actually do, right? And there's also other companies like Tesla that has a specific AI use case, like autopilot. How do you let AI drive your car without crashing, right? And academic players like MIT, Stanford, or any other major colleges have been always researching about ML and AI. So until recently, it was still relatively accessible only by the experts, right? Now, OpenAI has come out with a model called ChatGPT, which everybody knows now at this point, and it showed a possibility of everyday use case for AI for everybody. Even a typical person like our parents or our grandparents can use OpenAI to ask questions like, how do I aerate my lawn? My lawn has some patchy grass over here. How do I solve this? These questions used to be just, I guess, people go to Google or neighbors, but now you can just ask OpenAI or ChatGPT to get answers, right? And there's booms of these large language models like Llama and Palm 2 and a lot of other models that's coming out, but it's basically a gold rush at this point. So the breakthrough is happening at this point, and in the future, eventually, everybody, without doubt, uh, then anybody that has access to any type of device, including smartphones, should be able to run AI on their local machines. Obviously, these will be small machines, but it will be optimized to solve specific problems, as well as privacy first large language models and open source being one of the key critical factor in being successful models in the recent months. So these AI models will start to come out, and it will be democratization of AI for everybody. All right, next slide. So let's talk about concerns of AI before we only talk about good stuff. Four major things: ethics and morals. First, there are so many movies, sci-fi movies, books about AI taking over human race, wiping us out, right? And I personally believe that can be true. So we need to be making sure that anything we do with AI or anything we build with AI, they have some kind of a respect for human race, so that AI, when AI thinks that they're better than human, they're not going to wipe us out, right? And AI right now is just code, right, and data. But as AI dramatically improves day by day, it'll get to a state where they can be better than human in anything. So I truly believe that this is very important. And then there's other ethics and moral questions like privacy invasion. What's fair? What are the biased? Because based on the training data, they will be biased, right? So how do you solve these things? So these are some of the key questions that the government is trying to make a compliance around. And the second one is discrimination. So discrimination comes from the source training data, right? So if the data has bias, how do you let the AI know that this source was biased data, or how do you prevent AI from making decisions that's discriminating against certain groups of people, right? So how do you fix this? This is another concerns of AI. The third point is security and privacy. So there are this and here is huge. So right now, anything you type in ChatGPT, OpenAI has a full rights to using those data back as a training data. So it's a loop. So anything you type, anything you ask in the prompt, it can actually go back and OpenAI can actually use those private chats. So that's a privacy concerns, right? And a lot of times I see a lot of developers copy and paste code and asking questions, how do you fix this? How do you optimize this? And so on, right? You're copying, pasting a code that's either yours or your company's, and that should not go to OpenAI, right? So these are things that we need to be watching out for. So how do you basically allow or just restrict unauthorized data sharing, right? And lastly, economical impact. As AI grows and gets smarter, and eventually even will get hardware, they will replace a lot of things that humans will do. So there will be economic impact, and hopefully this will not cause people to lose jobs. Instead, this will cause people to reskill themselves. So how do you prepare for that without government or companies being one step ahead? This will be a big concern where we don't want to lay off people just because AI is taking over their jobs. We want to reskill these things so that there is no economic impact to the day-to-day people. Right. So these are some major concerns of AI. We can go into some of the stuff like this, where when morals and ethics goes wrong, Terminators, Matrix, iRobot. These are some of the sci-fi movies that has used this story to warn people that machines can take us over. And there's also failed attempts like chatbot done by Google. So I believe that was called Twitter Tay chatbot back in 2016. So they were training data based on the people's tweets, and eventually it became racist and narcissist, where because people were just feeding bad data on purpose so that they can corrupt the bot, right? So this is like early examples of how the discrimination of data can happen. And then there's a future that Tesla talked about recently, Tesla recently announced Optimus, which is a robot, and what they're claiming is that the AI work that they invested in the autopilot for the car can be reutilized within the Tesla Optimus, where they can now do a lot of things within the house. So everybody eventually will own a robot like this at home, just like they are owning a car. So this is a big jump in the AI step, but I believe this can really happen in the near future, and this is where I guess terminators can happen, where if we do not restrict the compliance and ethics of the AI. And there's also other problems like this trolley problem. The person sitting here can not the sitting here standing up can choose to save 5 lives or 1 life, but who is he to make that decision? Is he a god? No, it's just a person. But AI is gonna have the same issue. If you see it on the right side, if the car has some braking issue and they have to choose between a baby and a grandma, who is it gonna choose? Are we gonna choose by age, by wealth, or by possibility of a longer life? So things like that, like how do you make that decision? Uh, and who's going to code that? Who's going to be responsible for this accident? There's so many problems that rise with AI, and that's not regulated yet. So these are things that we need to address as people, so that we are able to agree on something and have rules against. All right. And there is the AI compliance side here. So the current models has been studied by Stanford, where they came up with a list of, uh, I guess, compliance or security or data privacy sections, and they will rate every major models. And as you can see, OpenAI GPT-4 only rated 25 out of 48. So we have a long way to go in terms of coming up with this type of compliance. But this is a draft Europe AI Act. It's not fully baked yet, but eventually it's going to come out in this year or possibly next year. So when this comes out, all these AI models will become illegal. So as Encora or as a AI developer, how do we get in front of this to prevent this? So we need to really think about every eight major requirements here: data source, data governance, copyrights, computer energy, capability limitation, and so on. These are major factors that comes into play when we work with AI. So how do we eventually come up with our own AI? How do we build our own private AI that doesn't have any of these issues and still compliant with all these compliances? So these are something to think about, and eventually this will impact or restrict the use of AI, uh, but in a good way, so that Matrix or Terminator doesn't happen. So I want to now talk about emphasis on the private LLMs. So because data privacy is very important, like I said, people are using ChatGPT for personal uh, therapy purposes, sometimes, which it shouldn't be used that way, but I believe some people are. Um, and they're putting a lot of sensitive and personal information in these prompts. And what happens is that they're all getting leaked by OpenAI or these third-party AI providers. So how do you protect this? Right? And there are three major ways that we can do. Federated learning, which is you're training the model. The data itself is staying inside the device, never gets out, and it's just trained in here. But there are problems with this, where your CPU and GPU is based on your device, so there's limitations on the performance, right? The other way is homomorphic encryption, which is you're gonna encrypt the data that you have provided, the training data, and it's gonna try to train based on the encrypted manner. But because it's encrypted, everything is slow. So that now once again you have performance issue. So this is also not ideal. Third is locally ran LLM. So you're just now spinning off a model in your local machine, which is similar to federated learning, but doesn't have to be local machine. At least you can do it in your private cloud like AWS, GCP, Azure, where you have full access and control, and you can train and run your own models. And this is probably the current best solution to emphasizing the privacy, data privacy, so that there's no leak or you're not compromised of your data. So eventually, I believe every company like Encora will eventually need to have our own AI models for this, where we might have a Python language model, we might have a Java language model, where like only Encora developers can use, so that no other third party can use this, and only Encora code can go in and out. So eventually, every services company like Encora will have their own model, and maybe not even services. Every company will have their own private models where they can use it, and most likely it'll be up to IT department to upgrade these private models every year, almost like a license. You don't want to be stuck using PowerPoint 97, right? When PowerPoint, is now a part of the cloud solution. So something like that. Eventually everybody will get access to a private models within the company, and they'll be able to just keep using it. But hopefully the company will renew it or improve the models as they go. Right. The next possible solution is power of small models. So right now, like the modern frame is that just bigger, 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 bigger is better, right? So GPT-3 having billions of nodes and parameters, GPT-4 might be even bigger. But at that point, there is challenge of uh, performance. Because GPT-4 model is bigger, there's bigger database and bigger things to look up, which is why GPT-4 3.5 is considerably slower than GPT-3. GPT-3, if you ask a question, a complex question, it might still give you an answer back quickly, whereas GPT-4 would take a while. It might take a couple seconds to come back. But as the models gets bigger and bigger, it's gonna have to do more lookups, and the performance of that will have caused problems. So although the accuracy of the data or answer might be better. So you're trading off speed with the accuracy. And because of that, it doesn't solve every issue. Because small, a I guess a simple task like finding out sentiment can be done by a small model. Why do you need a large model? Because at the end, your quality of answer is going to be very similar regardless. So bigger isn't always better. Second point here is small models can be highly effective. So small models is fast, right? So what you should do is fine tune it so that it's solving a specific problem. Fine tuning is basically allowing specific data to be trained and making sure that the the lookup within the model does not go some other crazy place. It's going to stay within the domain of this fine-tuned data. So it improves the accuracy as well as it's quick because it's a small model, right? And because it's a small model, you don't need a large servers, which means it's lower computational, and now you're environmentally friendly because you're not using like hundreds supercomputers to run a model. Right. Next is techniques. So small models, like I said, fine tuning is one of the techniques, but they can also break down into distillation, pruning, quantization, and so on. There's so many techniques out there that it is possible to fine tune specific small model. An example of this is Alpaca. So Stanford grads has taken Llama, which is a Facebook large language model, which was leaked, but it is a large language model. And what they did was they fine-tuned it and they reduced the size of the model so that anybody can run in their local. And I'll show you a demo of this right after this. But Alpaca can run in local. It's a small. It only takes up maybe 10 gigabytes in your laptop, and pretty much any modern computers can run this. Which means that you're now running AI on your own local host on your own, and your data, your training data doesn't have to go out. It can all stay in and be effectively just ran in your local host. And there's other ones that are like out there like BERT Mini, which is Palm-based Google version, and Mini ChatGPT, and so on. So there's so many models out there. You can check them out at Hugging Face and so on, which I'll show you later. But there are small models that's very effective. And here's an example, right? It says write an email to congratulate a new Stanford admits and mention that you're excited about meeting all of them. So I'm assuming there's a typo, but it has corrected here saying excited, right? And the quality of the email is not bad. I know obviously people use ChatGPT for this at this point, but what if you don't have to pay for ChatGPT 4 or just run this locally? Because this is a decent version of an email. So here's an example. And now I'll get to a demo. Let me quickly stop. Okay, so present, share screen. All right. So here is a local host. Here's a folder structure. I'm running Windows right now. And as you can see, it's only 4 gigabytes. And I can also show you this. I'm running this right now, alpaca.cpp, which is a basically Alpaca made for your local device. And they have instructions on how to run it. Anybody can check this out. It's open source. It's on GitHub, right? And what I've done was just download it based on the instruction. only 4 gigabytes, and now I can run it here like this. So now let me ask a question. How do I aerate my lawn in fall to fix my patchy grass? It's slow because my laptop is only 16 gigs of RAM and has a small GPU, but this is smart as a ChatGPT right now. At least uh, it is answering my question. Yep. I'll also show you a technical one. So this is just everyday use for our anybody. Now as a developer, let's say write me a Java code, or let's say Java method that converts string format string to date time format. Yep, and as you can see, this is a Java format, Java syntax. So you can you can adjust it saying, hey, I want to use a different format and so on. But this has the ability to answer code questions as well. And remember, this is only 4 gigabytes of a model size. So this is very impressive. You don't need to go to ChatGPT or pay for any of these large language models. You can just run this locally. And eventually, this is only a small demo, but eventually we'll fine tune this to solve a specific problems like improving Python 3.11 version, right? Because that's very new, and maybe we can import all the recent Python code and then just use it as a fine tuning data. And that should be very effective data that can be utilized for developers only for Encora, right? Which is a private small model that I've talked about in the previous slides. So coming back to my slides. All right. So how do you adapt now, right? So as a company and as a developer, we need to upskill ourselves, right? And right now we're trying hard as a company, right? Which is why we're having these type of sessions. But as an individual, there are so many learning materials out there. There are Hugging Face, there are Coursera courses, there are a lot of blogs like AI Canon, so on. So, all these links I will share post sessions, but this is anybody can start, anybody can be expert, not expert, but at least talk about AI and implement it as an engineer, right? We may not be AI scientists, but we can be AI engineers where we can use the AI projects that other has developed. And so this is AI is here to stay. I know that there was a lot of hype around blockchain before, and it's still here, but it hasn't taken off as the hype has made it out to be. But I truly believe that AI is here to stay, and it's only gonna grow and be relevant to everybody. So eventually, like smartphone has taken over the whole phone ecosystem. I believe AI will eventually take over a lot of businesses and how we function, and not just business on a personal level here as well. All right. So I'll open up the floor to Q&A, and uh, and I guess back to you.
All right. Well, thank you for the talk, Kevin. As you mentioned, I also believe that bringing importance not only like to the use and the benefits of AI, but also to the concerns in ethics and security, well, is especially relevant nowadays, right? So for those of you watching, let us know in the comments what you found interesting and useful about the talk. And of course, leave your questions too. So thank you for joining us. We hope you can join us again here on Encora Dev Week. Check out all of the upcoming sessions that we have on our website. It's devweek.encora.com, or stick around because the next session starts now. So until next time, see you guys.